the Author to Authority podcast. And today I have the wonderful privilege of introducing you to Amber Kierra. And she is a new friend of mine. And when we were doing the pre-interview together, I was just so impressed with her. And I knew that she needed to be on this show and share with you from her life and her experience. Now, Amber lost 90% of her eyesight growing up and has learned to use courage to overcome fear and navigate obstacles of any kind. She believes in a world where we are not held back by our circumstances. Rather, we live our roots rooted in purpose with boldness and courage. This belief has instilled an immense drive to empower others to take the next step in making their wildest dreams come true. And through speaking on stages and one-on-one coaching, she is truly transforming leaders into bold world changers. And she is going to be sharing with us today about the BOLD method. So welcome to the show, Amber.
Thank you so much for having me on. I, just like you said, time together on the call last week, and I just felt such great alignment with your energy and your message, and I am just thrilled to be here today. Thank you so much.
So Amber, why don't you introduce yourself to the listeners and tell us about your story?
Absolutely. So my name is Amber Kierra. I am 28, living in San Francisco, California, and I lost about 90% of my visual field throughout childhood. And so I've got about between 5 and 7 degrees of my visual field left over. And really through that experience, I've learned how to navigate very challenging obstacles with grace and ease and strength. And I love to use my stories, my wisdom, and my gifts to encourage others to live a life that they love and to do it with boldness and courage. And so I have developed a lot of really great strategies and tools for people to use to overcome very challenging obstacles, and to do that with a lot of strength. And just to make sure they're living a life that they love and being rooted in purpose and driven no matter what challenges they're facing. So it's a lot of fun. I do that through speaking on stages and through one-on-one and small group coaching. And I'm just having a blast being a part of people's transformations and walking alongside them as they reach their goals.
So if you don't mind me asking, what was one of the hardest new skills you had to learn as your eyesight kept decreasing?
Well, Braille is definitely hard, as one can imagine. But I think, overall, one of the hardest, not necessarily skills, but hardest things to learn was not to live my life based on what other people thought about me. So, for example, I'd walk into a college classroom or a job interview with my long white cane, and the first thing people would see is disability. And depending on their preconceived notions or their experiences with people with disabilities, that would be the way they treated me. So for people who thought, when they first see disability, they think poor, helpless, incompetent, and not in a way that they would actually vocalize those things, but they would come across in their actions and even in the things that were left unsaid. And so learning to navigate around that and still showing up and continuing to be the best that I can be and live a life that I'm called to live, based on my purpose, based on my calling, keeping that at the forefront and not getting so distracted by other people's, preconceived notions or, and that comes across in a lot of ways. For example, I had a professor in college tell me after class, you might as well drop my class now because there's no way you're going to pass it because you can't see. And I said, well, I need this class to change my major. And she goes, well, you might want to consider that. I'm like, well, I know what my calling is. I know what my purpose is. So I'm absolutely not going to drop your class. And I didn't. And I actually had 3 classes, with her. It was in the curriculum for my major, and I forged my way through each of them with success. But that's why I teach that knowing your calling and your purpose is so important, because it can be very easy to get sidetracked by those types of experiences, especially when you have multiple encounters like that, on a daily or weekly basis. And so I talk about tunnel vision a lot, which is what I have. I have tunnel vision, but I use that perspective to teach others how to adapt a perspective of tunnel vision, meaning you're only focused on one thing, and that is your purpose. So everything in the peripheral, like other people's thoughts, opinions, negative self-talk, stories, things that have happened to you in your past, worries, fears, all those things are in the peripheral. And when you adapt a perspective of tunnel vision, you don't see those things. You only see what's in front of you, which is a bright future that's rooted in your purpose.
That is so cool. When you were talking, it reminded me of back in grade 5. I had a teacher who had a family member who was blind. And so I can't remember what time of year it was, but I guess it was a time of year where, they had like a special day to recognize blind people. And he brought in one of the white canes. And I remember him saying that, just because a person's blind, when you see this cane, it doesn't mean that a person's dumb, stupid, whatever. And the cane just means that that's their guide, just to help them navigate the world and to really respect it. And if someone needs help, they will ask you, but you don't automatically have to assume just because they're blind that they need help. And so it was a real eye-opener for me, um, in my experience as a 10-year-old child, to think, wow, like blind people can do a lot of things. And, obviously there are some limitations and things you have to overcome, but it doesn't mean that you stop living because of it. So it was such an eye-opening event for me. And the other thing is I have somebody I know very well who has a speech impediment. So this person is very smart, but the ability to vocally communicate is hard. This person has to kind of really think through before the words will come out. And I watch sometimes how people look at this person, and I think, if you only knew how smart they were, right? It was just, and I almost want to slap people because they look at this person and think, oh, she's dumb and stupid, because it takes her a moment to be able to speak. And I'm thinking, you have no idea.
Yeah. Well, in taking this just a little further, how often do we look at either other people's circumstances or things that are on the surface, or even our own circumstances or surface level things, and make those types of assumptions? Someone might say, oh, I don't come from a very rich family. I'm never going to make it to this level. Or, you know what? I'm a first generation graduate. Nobody's going to want to hire me for this job. I've got no connections. Or, oh, the color of my skin, or my gender, or the fact that I don't conform to, or all these things that we look at when we first see ourselves or first see other people's. We do have a tendency to create what I call stories about ourselves or about other people's that can hold us back.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do use stories like that of people when they first see my cane, or that I have a disability, to teach other people how to really have that clear, quote unquote, clear vision focus, and not allow those surface level things to hold them back or to create stories about themselves or about others. It's actually a part of a new talk that I have called Blind with 2020, learning to live a life with clear vision despite the blur. So
I like that.
Yeah, and it's really fun to have that real life analogy for people, but also to help people. I want people to start thinking more deeply about these things and these
Mhm.
concepts and how they are affecting their lives and the lives of other people around them.
So I just have one more kind of personal question for you before, because I do want to let you loose to share a lot more about this bold method. But something I've always wondered about is when, obviously, like when you're at home or in your neighborhood, you know that area very well. But if you're traveling or you're in a new situation or a new place, um, how do you navigate so that you know where you're going when you can't see signs? Now, I know a lot of signs have braille on them, but can you talk a little bit about that? Because that's something I've always wondered about.
Sure, and thank you for asking. I've got all my skills. So I know how to use a cane, I've got GPS, I know how to use directions. And so, just depending on the circumstance, I use a different set of skills that I have learned over the many years. And that's just what I do. I vocalize what I need, I advocate for myself, I ask questions, I ask for assistance when I deem it necessary. And so it's just about using the skills that I have and adapting them as I go. Now, if somebody woke up tomorrow and they were blind, yeah, I don't expect them to take a trip overseas, to Italy by themselves and being able to navigate with ease. But if you've been blind for 30 years,
Yes.
and you've been taking trips independently and you've honed in and use those skills, then yeah, it's almost like somebody who really loves numbers. I'm not going to expect them to do my taxes tomorrow just because they love numbers. But someone who has gone to school and gotten a degree and passed certification examinations and taken years and years to practice these skills, then yeah, I would trust them to do that. But so it's all about practice. Life is a practice. Whatever you do, it's a practice. And over the years, over time, you'll see how those things that you've been practicing will come in handy, and being able to use those tools with confidence and also asking for help when you need it. So it's a mixture of both.
That is awesome. I never would have thought of the GPS. That is so cool.
Yeah.
All
Absolutely.
right. So you're here today to share with us about the bold method. So I'm going to let you loose for a bit to talk about that. And then once you're done, I'm going to have a few questions for you as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. So, just the way the bold method has come about was, when I meet people or people that have known me for a long time, the one word they use to describe me was bold. And so they go, "Oh my gosh, you're so bold for doing that. Oh my gosh, you went where by yourself? You're starting what company? What? You're so bold." Um, because I love to travel. I've been to Africa. I've started a nonprofit and a businesses and just all these fun things that feel natural to me because it's just a part of my calling and who I am. But to others, it seems really bold. And so I've taken that word and I've put together really a four-step method and a strategy for how I've used courage to overcome fear in my own life over the years. So it's really a compilation of the wisdom that I've gained and the strategies that I've used to overcome these obstacles. And it's a beautiful structure that can be used no matter what circumstance you're facing. And I often have to come back to this method um, in order to navigate circumstances, whether they're related to blindness, disability, or just a tricky life thing. And so it's a four-step method, B.O.L.D, bold. And I'll give you guys just a breakdown of what those letters stand for and how you can apply it to your own life. So the first step to the bold method is breaking free from the story. And so, the strategy for breaking free from any story is very simple. It's to identify the story and decide to break free. And for me, when people found out that I was blind or losing my vision, they would kind of say the same set of phrases in response over and over again. they'd say, oh, poor thing, or oh, I'm so sorry, or I feel so sorry for you. And so after hearing those phrases over and over again, as a child, you can imagine different storylines starting to develop. And so, every once in a while, I would find myself living in a story that was like, well, I can't do it because I'm blind, or obviously this isn't going to happen because I'm blind, or I might as well, call it quits or get to the end of the line, or nobody's going to pick me because I'm blind. All these things that weren't really based on the truth of who I was, but based on things that I've heard over and over again from other people and then from my own mind. So really just deciding to really identifying those stories and deciding to break free from them. And I know for a lot of people I coach and for a lot of people I speak with after my talks, they're got all sorts of different stories. I've probably dealt with over 20 different stories, and multiple stories come up a day. And so, as humans, we've got these different stories that come into our minds, and that if we really listen to those stories over and over, they start to dictate how we live and how we think, the decisions we make, and how we think about ourselves. And so just being able to identify those stories and deciding to break free. And one thing I found to be helpful is to just write those things down and bring them to your coach. Bring them to someone who you know and trust and say, these are the stories I've been living in, and I'm deciding not to live in them anymore. And I'd like you to help me, hold me, accountable to not living in these stories, and help me wrestle through this and work through this. So that really is the first step.
That's awesome. A thought that occurred to me is sometimes people don't, I've heard people say to me, well, I don't know what stories I'm listening to. And, a little exercise I've taught people is, if someone offers you something and the first thought is, no, I can't do that because, your story is the words that come after the word because.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with that. And, for a lot of people, they can identify the stories they've been living in, but for some people, it's all about asking those questions, just like you said, and helping people to really identify these stories. And there's just a lot of power in that. I also like to ask people what kind of lies are in your head that just aren't true about you, that aren't true, that you hear from yourself often. And those can come out in lots of different conversations,
Mm-hmm.
especially when there's a breakdown. People go, oh, I'm never going to accomplish this. Well, that's a lie. Oh, I can't do this. Well, that's a lie. Oh, I'm not good enough. Well, that's a lie. And so we start, so they often come to the surface in breakdown. But what we want to do is mitigate that and just say, hey, before there's any breakdown, or while we're not in a season of breakdown, what are some of those stories that you have faced, and how can we put a stop to those before another breakdown occurs?
Awesome. Now let's go on to O.
O is overcoming fear. And really the strategy behind overcoming fear is very simple. And I like to use the story of me learning to use a cane for the first time was very challenging. And the interesting thing about a long white cane, as you might remember when you were in school and had that stay, was that it's long enough, but it's not like super long. The cane doesn't tell you if the next 30 steps are safe. It doesn't tell you if the next 300 steps are safe. The cane will only tell you if the very next step is safe to take. And the only way you're going to get to your destination is by taking multiple steps, step by step. But you keep walking towards your destination regardless. And so the strategy that I teach behind overcoming fear is all you've got to do is take the next step.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to worry about the next 30 steps, the next 300 steps. You don't have to think about what's going to happen tomorrow or in 5, 10 years. You've just got to really declare and make it up in your mind to take the very next step today. And for most people, they are one text message, one phone call, one email, one Facebook post away, one submit button away from really making their wildest dreams come true. And so I always encourage people when they hear this, make it up in your mind. What step can you take today to get you closer to your destination? And I can guarantee you this, based off of my own experiences, is that with each step you take, it's going to get easier, and it's going to get lighter, and the fear is just going to melt away. So the only way to overcome fear is by taking the next step.
That is so true. And one thing I've learned is fear is not real.
Right.
It makes us feel like it's real. Your heart could be pounding, you could be feeling this dread and this overwhelm and all these feelings and even physical reactions. But once you take that first step and you conquer the fear, it's like you walk through the shadow and you realize the light's on the other side, and you look back and the shadow's gone, and you're thinking, oh, wow, I just went through all of this and there was nothing to it.
Right. Yeah. It's not, the overcoming fear, the strategy is very, very simple. It's simple. And I just want to encourage people, wherever you're at today, whatever you're up to, whatever your dreams are, take that next step and have someone hold you accountable to that. Maybe text someone after you hear this podcast and say, hey, by the end of the day, I'm going to make that phone call, or I'm going to press that submit button, or I'm going to, whatever the case may be. But there's just so much power behind taking the next step.
Yes. So that leads us to L.
L. L is living your truth. And the only way to live your truth is to know it. You've got to know
Yes.
the truth. So when I face circumstances where people discriminate against me because I have a disability, I just let it roll off my back like water, because I know the truth about me. Now, if I didn't know the truth about me, then I might ponder on those situations longer and consider them and say, oh, well, maybe they're right, or this, that, and the third. But I know the truth about me. And so I just want to encourage you, go think deeply. You know the truth about you. The truth about you is that you're bold, you're courageous, you're intelligent, you have unique gifts that you are going to share with the world that's going to make an impact. You have a purpose, a calling. All these things are true about you. And so you've got to make it up in your mind to live your truth no matter what circumstance you're facing. And you've got to know it, and know it deeply. And I always say, after this talk or after this call, I should be able to come up to you and say, hey, what's your truth? And I want you to just be able to tell me right then and there. I don't want any pondering or thinking about it, or, I want you to know your truth so well that you can just tell it to me like the way you say your name,
I love that.
Yeah, it's really in that place where people find power and freedom, and they start to walk in that every day, and come hell or high water, they're going to live their truth no matter what's going on in the world.
Awesome. All right. And that brings us to the last one, D. I'm excited.
Yes, D is dream with purpose. Now, I could have just left it at dream, but I noticed that when we are dreaming with purpose, that is where the power comes from. And really, from that place, every decision we're making, everything we're spending our money and our time on is really from that place. And there's a lot of clarity behind a purposeful dream. When people come to you with lots of opportunities, or when you're trying to figure out what your next move is, you are going to be so crystal clear on your purpose that you'll be able to face those decisions with ease, because the fact of the matter is it either aligns with your purpose or it does not. And so when it comes to job opportunities or interviews, or, are you going to write a book? Are you not going to write a book? Are you going to do this next opportunity or are you not? Are you going to spend the next hour talking to this person or are you not? Does it align with your purpose or does it not? And there's so much power behind a purposeful dream, because a purposeful dream isn't rooted in self. So a purposeful dream is not, I want to make, I want to make 7 figures this year. Well, that's just a dream. That's not a purposeful dream. But, I would like to increase my income by this much so that I can filter it into a project that's going to do this for the world. Or, I'd like to start speaking my truth on stages to people because I want to use my story to inspire others to live a life that they love and work from that space. Or, I want to write this book so that I can inspire other people, to do this or that. So really that purposeful dream is rooted and based off of your impact. And from that place, everything, works out. The income will be there, the opportunities will be there, but it all starts from a dream that's rooted in purpose.
That is so awesome, Amber. Wow. When I liked how you call it a purposeful dream, because we dream many things, but a purposeful dream has a plan behind it.
Absolutely, it really does. And I actually teach a workshop based on the letter D, dreaming with purpose. But that workshop is called, and I love the way you just said plan, but the workshop is called crafting your GPS. And we actually mentioned GPS earlier, but it's creating your roadmap to success. So once we know your purpose and we identify that, we create a multi-step plan, a roadmap that's going to get you from where you are now to your dream destination. And it all starts with a purposeful dream.
That is amazing. Now, Amber, how can people connect with you?
Absolutely. So I'm on Facebook and Instagram. My website is just my name. It's amberkierra.com, AMBERKIERRA.com. And, if anyone wants to talk more or really dive into this a little more deeply, I would encourage you just pop over to my website and book a connection call with me. Would love to hear from you, hear that purposeful dream on your heart, support you in breaking free from any stories that you have and getting you to that dream destination where you're making a big impact on the world. So would love to hear from you all.
That's awesome. Well, we're going to be closing up. Do you have any one final thought you'd like to share?
I want to encourage each of you, under the sound of my voice, as you're listening to this, take that next step today. Take that very next step today, whether it is booking a connection call with someone or reaching out to your coach or pressing that submit button on that application that you've been waiting on, starting that new website, whatever the case may be. I want to encourage you to take that next step and do it, but do it by the end of the day. And you're going to be amazed and you're going to be stepping into something very powerful. So I just want to encourage you to do that.
Well, thank you so much. This has been Amber Kierra and Kim Thompson-Pinder on the Author to Authority podcast. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you on the very next episode. Bye now.